It's Monday morning. It's the start of a new week. It's your first sip. Now, I appear to have misplaced my coffee, so I'm going to go grab it. And I want to ask you a question to start things up. I'm going to show you something here. Do you remember this? Take a look.
I think it is extraordinary that Mark Carney has become the Prime Minister of Canada. He did a terrible job in Britain of the governorship of the Bank of England. He created a lot of the problems that blew up on my watch and that I got blamed for were actually created by him. He backed Labour in the election and Rachel Reeves's policies, which are leading the country to bankruptcy. So why on earth the Liberal Party of Canada has selected this man, I have no idea. And I think it is illegitimate that this guy has never been elected as a member of Parliament in Canada. I'm utterly puzzled. Back at the turn of the millennium, the average Brit was catching up with the average American in terms of income per head.
Wow.
We are now $34,000 a year behind. We are poorer than Mississippi, which is the poorest American state. And the same is true. The same is true of France and Germany, and to some extent of Canada, because they pursued all of these woke policies. High taxes, high spending, not using their natural resources. And Justin Trudeau was the architect of that. And of course, Mark Carney has been the advocate of these policies. So I don't know what is going on in Canada, but in the same way as I think people in Britain need to wake up to what the real threat to our country is, I think they need to wake up in Canada.
Oh, how we were warned about all these lies, Canada. Oh, how we were warned. Deadlines never met, promises never kept. And here we go. Canada's Grey Cup has now come and gone. The confetti, it's all been swept away, plowed away by snowplows perhaps. But the players, they've all gone home. The stadium lights, they've all cooled. And so too has yet another one of Mark Carney's promises, another deadline, another commitment, another moment that was supposed to restore trust between Ottawa and our western provinces. And what has happened? Absolutely nothing. Danielle Smith and Mark Carney both made a very public promise that they would get a new energy agreement done by Grey Cup Sunday. They tethered themselves to that date. They said that it really mattered, that they signaled to Canadians that this deadline marked a turning point in this country. And yes, we should have voted in the Liberals because this Western deal was going to be great. A moment where the so-called consensus builder in the Prime Minister's office would finally show Canadians he could deliver something of consequence, because surely he could negotiate internally with our own premiers, right? And just like every other promise he has made this year, he blew it. Let's go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things, the first sip. I'm Chris Baker. It's your Monday. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, join the conversation down below on yet another promise failed. The most galling part of all of this failure is that it wasn't really a surprise. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an act of God, of some unforeseeable shift in global markets. No, this was the logical, predictable result of a prime minister who cannot negotiate his way out of a cardboard box, who has no working relationship with Western leaders or even leaders of other countries, who cannot close a deal inside his own borders, and who thinks that deadlines are nothing more than just headlines at the time as long as it earns you polling numbers. Shiny little baubles handed to the media to keep them distracted for another news cycle. Because let's be crystal clear on everything we've seen here. If Mark Carney cannot negotiate an energy framework inside his own doors, inside his own four walls of a country with people who actually want to get a deal done, what on earth makes anyone think he can negotiate with foreign powers who don't really give a crap whether they get a deal done with Canada or not? In particular, Donald Trump. So this Grey Cup deadline was super important, more important than you thought. It mattered because it was the safest, the easiest, the most controlled negotiation he will ever face in his political life, and he failed. Alberta wasn't trying to sabotage Ottawa in any way. Saskatchewan wasn't trying to burn the Federation down. The West came to the table in good faith, asking for stability, asking for clarity, and a roadmap for the next decade. That's all they needed. They weren't holding the country hostage. They weren't asking for the moon. They were asking, well, begging Prime Minister Mark Carney to stop playing political theater and actually put pen to paper. And he couldn't even get that done. He had months. This was not even a quick deadline. He whiffed on the easiest pitch he will ever see. He struck out on a slow moving beach ball. And that should terrify every single Canadian because it means everything he's been doing and all of the taxpayer money he's spent on flying around the world means nothing. Because if Mark Carney can't negotiate with Danielle Smith, a premier who has stated openly that she wants to fix the relationship with Ottawa, how is he supposed to negotiate with President Donald Trump, who, let's be honest here, has absolutely zero patience for dithering, delay, academic games, ads placed on his airwaves, or bureaucratic fantasy budgets? Trump said it himself. Carney is always late. The deadlines with the U.S. have all passed too now at this point. Every single one of them. The trade timelines blown by. The supply chain talks stalled. The auto sector briefings completely missed, not even talked about in the budget, really. The softwood lumber checkpoint disappeared into the fog. Mark Carney's Canada is showing up to the negotiating table like that guy who texts you on my way when he's really still in the shower. Except geopolitics, I should say, doesn't wait. The United States doesn't wait. Donald Trump especially does not wait. And the West sure didn't wait either. They didn't have to. They thought they were internal. They thought they were a brother or a sister of us. This is not the mark of a master negotiator in any way. This is the mark of a man who doesn't know what he's doing. We saw the UK tell us about this before we even elected this man. And here's the part that should make your blood boil even further. Canada was warned about this. We just watched the clip loudly, clearly, publicly. Former British Prime Minister Theresa May, she warned Canadians that Mark Carney was not suited for political leadership. But did we listen? No. She's a senior British official. Other British officials warned that Carney was, in their words, unpredictable, indecisive, and overly reliant on bureaucratic insulation to avoid being held accountable, and that's all we've seen so far. He built a reputation in the UK for saying everything with confidence and delivering nothing of substance, and that's all we've seen so far. He was the guy who spoke in perfectly crafted, perfectly poll-tested, perfectly vague sentences that sounded profound right up until you realized he didn't actually say anything at all. And guess what? That's all we've seen so far. And when British officials raised those red flags to each and every one of us, Canadian voters shrugged it right off. They brushed it aside. They thought it was noise. Instead, it was the clearest warning shot we could have asked for, and it was done before we even elected the guy. And now we're living inside the nightmare and the consequences that have ensued. We are watching a prime minister who is proving his British detractors right at every single turn. They warned that he cannot manage timelines. They warned that he hides behind definitions and frameworks and fancy accounting tricks. They warned that when the pressure rises, he retreats into technocratic jargon instead of decisive action. And folks, that is all we've seen so far. And now here we are. The man has been in office for a matter of months, and he is already cooking the books in his very first budget to hide the fact that the true deficit is actually closer to, if not over, $100 billion. Canadians were told the Canada Strong budget was about investment, about future growth, about turning a corner. Meanwhile, the parliamentary budget officer, whom we've seen and we've talked about all weekend long, before Carney, he fired him already, but he blew the whistle and showed that $94 billion in so-called investments were actually operating costs smeared with a thin layer of creative accounting. How can we be allowing all of this? They hid the real deficit under a pile of reclassified spending so high that you'd need climbing gear just to scale it. This is a prime minister who can't meet deadlines, can't tell the truth about the books he's creating, can't negotiate with his own provinces, and can't seem to grasp the most basic expectation Canadians have for a prime minister, which is simply get something done. At what point do we give up here? At what point do we pull the plug on our patience? The Grey Cup deadline was more than symbolic. It was a test. It was a moment that told us whether this government could walk and chew gum at the same time. Could they manage a major domestic negotiation while preparing for intense international talks? Could they stabilize the relationship with the West, with the very provinces that are always at odds with Ottawa while navigating the most important trade relationships in the world? Could they show that all the big talk, all the glossy magazine spreads, all the puff pieces from friendly journalists who are paid off by the Liberals were more than just the political equivalent of airbrushing? Could they do all of that? The answer is now clearly no, they couldn't. Carney is now exposed as a leader who treats deadlines like decorations. He announces them, he earns a headline, he gets a few days of positive coverage, which helps boost his nanos polls, and then he lets the deadline quietly expire every single time, hoping nobody notices the nothingness that follows. But Canadians rather, are noticing. They're noticing now. Western premiers are noticing. The business community is noticing and hightailing it out of here. President Trump has definitely noticed and doesn't even talk about us anymore. And foreign investors who were told that Canada was back are noticing that this government can't deliver the basics of regulatory certainty whatsoever. They can't deliver interprovincial cooperation even, or fiscal transparency for that matter. We can't deliver under this Liberal government. This failure with Danielle Smith is not a one-off. It is part of a pattern of drift, indecision, posturing, and an almost academic detachment from the real consequences facing everyday Canadians like you and I each and every single day. And that's the part that makes this so dangerous, Canada. We are living in a country facing the highest cost of living crisis in modern history. This is no joke. Stupefying, as Jake says, under a prime minister who can't manage a negotiation with a government that actually wants one. Housing is collapsing. Investment is fleeing. Food bank usage is at record highs. Young people are drowning in rent. Students are drowning in debt. Families are drowning in mortgage renewals. And the only thing this government seems to be able to negotiate is their own talking points and mixing them in with ums and ahs. Meanwhile, inside the House of Commons, they are firing the guy who dared to point this out. This is the craziest part of all. Who dared to point out that the numbers don't add up, as though the problem is the math teacher, not the math. If Mark Carney cannot handle a cooperative negotiation with Alberta, then how can he possibly negotiate with countries that may be having competing interests? Alberta didn't, and we still couldn't get anything done. What if they have rival agendas and enough leverage to crush Canada if they feel like it? How are we going to negotiate with those ones? If he can't meet a Grey Cup deadline, how can he meet a Washington deadline? If he can't handle Danielle Smith, how is he going to handle Donald Trump? If he can't stop cooking the books domestically, how is he going to earn credibility abroad? People see this. It's not just us that see this when he cooks the books like this. It's everyone he's trying to negotiate with. What is he going to do to the agreements? That's what they're going to ask. This is the central question of this entire episode. If a prime minister cannot negotiate inside his own country, he cannot negotiate outside of it, full stop, as he likes to say. And that is what makes this moment so pivotal in Canada. Canadians are seeing the cracks, not over years, but over months, and that's scary. This is not a man who is slowly sliding downhill. This is a man who began at the bottom of the hill and is digging deeper every time he opens his bloody mouth. The British warned us of all of this. His timeline failures warned us. His missing U.S. deadlines warned us. His inability to keep even a friendly deadline with Alberta has screamed it from the rooftops now. And now his budget, his very first budget, by the way, has exposed the truth. This prime minister is not capable of delivering the job he sold this country on. He makes grandiose promises and doesn't even come close to delivering them. We are running out of chances, and Mark Carney is running out of excuses. The Grey Cup deadline, as funny and as crazy as that actually was in the end, was a line in the sand. Canada watched, Alberta watched, the West waited, and when the buzzer sounded, once again, Canada got the same thing Mark Carney has delivered since the day he took office. Absolutely, positively nothing. And this country deserves better. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course, join the conversation down below. Are you surprised at all that this deadline was missed? I know I'm not. Let's hear from you. And don't forget to join us at 3:45 this afternoon for the last word. Can't wait to see you then. Have a great Monday.